Hi, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, or PF2, as a cattail on the face. I love Pathfinder 2, and I mean, I love lots of role-playing games, but Pathfinder 2 is my favorite. Which is interesting, because I played a whole lot of games from, like, 92 on, and it's my favorite. I should tell you something about it, at least. I don't know. So, I'm going to be talking about the Runesmith today, as you're aware of because you clicked on this video. But I do not follow. Oh. He almost fell on my lap. That would have been unpleasant for both of us. Oh my god. I'm going to be covering the class, the Runesmith, but I have a lot to say about it personally. Theme mostly. Like, alright. Oh my... No, this can't continue. Dude, you can't handle yourself right now. He's cute too, though. It sucks. Okay. If you don't want to hear my perspective overall on the Runesmith theme, and you want to skip right to how the Runesmith works, go to this time. I don't know how long I'll be, but I tend to be long-winded about things I like. It's just who I am. So the Runesmith, I'm going to read the sort of thematic phrase for the class, and then tell you what I think about it. At the heart of all communication is the word, and at the heart of all magic is the rune. Equal parts scholar and artist, you devote yourself to the study of these mystic symbols, learning to carve, etch, brand, and paint the building blocks of magic to channel powers greater than yourself. Regardless of what they do with the mechanics of this class, I love that it exists. I love that this theme exists, because they haven't done a whole lot with word magic, rune magic, glyph magic, whatever you want to call it. Except for True Name Magic, which only has a feat, a couple of spells, and an activity that you can do. It's cool. It means you research the name of a potential subject, and then when you face them in combat, you gain certain benefits depending on the spell or whatnot, or the feat. The concept behind all magic is words. It's thought and idea and will that is transformed into words that you then speak aloud to cause their effect. That's what enchantment means. It's chanting, it's speaking. That's the root of that term, at least. Words have power. That thought has been fascinating to me ever since that I learned... Ever since I heard the idea. I had a speech impediment when I was a kid. I couldn't say R's or S's. And my name included a lot of R's, so I sounded really stupid. So early on, my mother had me go to a speech therapist, and I learned how to focus on words and how to focus on sounds and how to think about the words that I was going to say before I said them. I had a lot of meta-thinking about words. And my father taught me how to read phonetically and how the alphabet should actually sound when you're pronouncing those individual letters and sounds. He taught me how to think about syllables and how to sound something out and understand the meaning of it. And because of that, my reading comprehension is pretty good. But also because of that, I take forever to read anything. Anyway, words have always meant a lot to me. And that really hit home in high school when I met my English professor named Mr. McShane. And he said that words fascinate me. I mean, he said about himself, words fascinate me. You will go a long way in this world if you have a strong command of the English language. I no longer think that's true, but his obsession with words provided me access to books that were just definitions of words. Yeah, you might say that's a dictionary, but I mean, they were they were lessons in workbooks that was like all verbs or all nouns and how to learn and understand them and how to use them in sentences. And there were at least 2 homework assignments every night on a single or a few words. Yes, hello. And we all inherently experience that words have power. Ask anybody who's ever been bullied for any reason if words have power. Or if the kind words of a supportive person don't make you feel energetic, empowered, warm, comforted, stronger. Words have power in our daily lives. That translates to words have power in general, and the intent behind them can change reality. And so I love that the Runesmith takes this concept and gives it magical application. I want them to do more in Runesmith with true name magic. There is a feat that uses true name, but it's like 16th level. It's really high level. I want to see more of that in here to sort of prop up the true name system. Also, if you're still watching this, tell me in the comments if you want me to go through how I fill out a questionnaire or a survey for a playtest. I'll make a video on it. Alright, now I'm going to go through the Runesmith, and like the Necromancer, I'm not going to read everything, and it's still going to take forever. I'm going to hit the high points that matter to me, and I'm going to read all of the runes and all of the feats, and talk about them. I'm not going to like all of them, but I like some of them a lot. I have jingly earrings. Alright, so to start off with, the Runesmith is a martial class, in that they're not a caster, but that's sort of like saying the kineticist is a martial class. I suppose that the Runesmith is sort of between a champion and a... no, it's between a thaumaturge in mechanics and practice and a kineticist. It has powers, runes, that you learn that increase in power as your character levels that aren't based on a spell level you can cast, spell rank you can cast. And it gets no specific spells. Mostly. Later on there's a feat. Doesn't matter yet. But I like that they made another class that's like the kineticist that multi-classes really well, because classes that I don't like most martials, I still like to archetype into, because it has certain powers and abilities that are unique to it, or a flavor that I want to dip into with some of my classes. Like, I don't like non-casters, generally speaking, but the Runesmith I will dip into for certain purposes, like I want to be a word mage. Or I want to curse people, and it makes sense that I would know about how words work to do so. So Runesmith is only trained in perception, which I think is... I think it's a mistake just for the theme of absorbing words and making words your study. You don't have to be perceptive of your surroundings, but you do have to be perceptive about glyphs and symbology and runes, words. I think that would make someone who is particularly studious and attentive to their surroundings. Because every rune or glyph has a meaning somewhere. Like the first letter of my name, J. The original glyph is a fishhook, and the meaning behind it is pulling things to you. There's meaning everywhere, so it seems to me the Runesmith would be aware of the meaning hidden in things. Like you'd make a symbology thaumaturge really well. Alright, so saving throws, expert in fortitude and expert in will, trained in reflex. I guess I get that because they are sort of like a magic-ish using martial class, so the fortitude and will, sure. Trained in crafting? That seems mostly thematic, but you do have to be trained in crafting or better in order to make certain magical runes. The crafting skill is largely not used by this class. but it does give you abilities to inscribe runes on weapons and armor for which you need crafting. So, it's good to have it. I'm glad it's given to you. You'd take it anyway if you didn't have it as an automatic choice. Trained in your choice of arcana, nature, occultism, or religion. I want to talk about this for a moment because there are runes that require that you know 2 of those depending on the rune. So it says that you're only automatically trained in your choice of one of these, plus you're trained in a number of additional skills equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier. This is an intelligence-based class, which is interesting. Intelligence martial. I know we have a couple of them now, but I think it's cool. You're going to eventually want to be trained in at least 2 of arcana, nature, occultism, or religion, and if you're not sure, just take all of them, because it'll make you the most flexible for some of the later runes. Trained in simple weapons, trained in martial weapons, trained in unarmed attacks. It's a martial class, that makes sense. Defense is trained in light armor, trained in medium armor, trained in unarmored defense. I guess we could accept that that makes sense because of, like, the sort of Gish style caster martial class. But also, there are some things that this class is required to do that requires a lot of movement. And so being trained in heavy armor just wouldn't be getting a lot of use from this class anyway, or for this class. I'm going to read the Runesmith jobs that you do, depending on the situation, because I want to talk about a couple of them, and so I may as well mention the others so you understand the Runesmith better. During combat encounters, you make a canvas of the battlefield, tracing beneficial runes onto your allies to strengthen and empower them while looking for opportunities to carve harmful runes onto those who oppose you. When the moment is right, you invoke your runes to bring their magic to life. So, runes have an effect, and they can be invoked for an additional effect. Invoking is just another action you take, but you take the action of invoking it, and then the rune fades. During social encounters, your knowledge of magical theory, if not practiced, can translate into a surprising array of facts for any dialogue. Even if you're not the most persuasive, you might be able to support a more eloquent teammate with a subtly placed runic enchantment. In other words, you might like talking about words or magic, and that's kind of your and using your magic in social encounters is kind of your best strength in social encounters. This is not a social class. While exploring, you study ancient inscriptions on temple walls or lost artifacts to glean their history and forewarn your party. You take time to maintain runic inscriptions on your allies' gear, ensuring they'll be ready for the next encounter. I would cater to a runesmith in my games because I have a passion for words. I love them, and glyphs, and therefore runes. And I see that this class thematically fits a ritualist really well, because you have to understand other languages and symbology in order to create rituals. Because that's what a ritual circle is. I mean, historically, in the occult, in general. In downtime, you balance scholarly magical research with an ardent practice of your craft. You may begin each morning composing a poem or spend each afternoon toiling at a forge, your understanding of runes growing day by day. I love that words factor into every aspect of this class's life. So you start a morning composing a poem. I also imagine this kind of character singing. Not that they're great at singing, because they're not a bard. They don't get any special training in singing, and their charisma is not going to be great. Your choice, of course. But because they appreciate the words in the song. Like, they would probably do a kind of singing that'd be easy for them, but they appreciate the value of, like, a chant. So I could see these people seeming or being very religious, because that's where most chants are used. It might even just be like they're casual members of a religion. They just like going to the services and singing along because it's fun. I might have done that before. You might pull from your study of languages and scripts and everyday conversation, using the odd word or maxim in an ancient language when the common tongue doesn't quite suffice. This is totally made for bookwormy, nerdy people, and I love it. Personalize your magic items with small phrases or engravings that hold personal meaning. Something else you might do. Yeah, makes sense. You'd have like little symbols carved all over everything you have, or drawn on, or in a bag that has a symbol of that thing. Others probably ask for your assistance when a necklace clasp needs fixing or their armor needs resizing. Because you mess with runes, and therefore armor because crafting. And others probably think you are a practitioner of magic instead of just a humble scholar. but they're kind of right. These abilities are magical as much as the kineticist's impulses are magical, because they're affected by magical things. They're important key terms in this class because these terms are brand new, but they're also used repeatedly throughout this class. So you really have to know these key terms. The following key terms, new key terms, appear in many Runesmith class features and feats. Runes. A runesmith doesn't cast spells, but they can apply various magical effects through runes. Runes can be applied via etching or tracing. Etched runes are applied in exploration mode and last indefinitely, while traced runes last only until the end of your next turn. Their effects, however, are the same. So you know a rune, you can start with it etched in the morning, and also trace it on an enemy or ally later, if you want. Several abilities refer to creatures bearing one of your runes, known as rune bearers. This is any creature who has one of your runes applied to its body or to any gear it is holding. I would say to any gear it has on its person, because they don't have to be like holding it in a hand. It could be their backpack or something. Invocation. An invocation action allows a runesmith to surge power through a rune by uttering its true name. That isn't mentioned many places, but this is important. Invocation requires you to be able to speak clearly in a strong voice and requires that you be within 30 feet of the target rune or runes unless another ability changes this. The target rune then fades away immediately after the action resolves. So on a battlefield, you are yelling magical phrases. Much like the Illumians in 3.5 D&D. Like they would have the Crow rune. They're beings that are composed of words. They're words given life. And they have certain sigils that float around their head that mean certain things for their personality, their experiences, and also gives them powers. And the Crow rune made just like, it was like force. It was explosions, if I remember correctly. It was just damage. Diacritic. Diacritic is a special type of rune that is not applied directly to a creature or object, but rather to another rune itself, modifying or empowering that base rune. A diacritic can never be applied by itself, and any effect that would remove or invoke the base rune always also removes or invokes the diacritic rune. A rune can have only one diacritic. A diacritic is, it's a real term. It means the symbols that are used with letters that modify pronunciation or the appearance of that letter. Like my last name has 2 dots over the U. That's an umlaut. And so the 2 dots are a kind of diacritic. So is just the slash or the flat line or curving line. You've seen these. It just tells you how to pronounce the letters or the words. So you apply those symbols to words that you make to modify how that word functions magically. This is just a cool theme. This class is the only one I've ever seen that screams out for the linguist archetype. How many times have you heard, you should take linguist for this? Linguist. It's all about words. You learn languages, you can translate languages, or you can translate between people really fast. Linguist even lets you understand someone's background by watching, paying attention, listening to their words, understanding if they are pretending to be something they aren't, just by listening to them talk. It's really a cool idea. Let's read shibboleths. Or you can communicate with someone without using words because you understand communication in general. It seems to fit with this. Now, applying runes. You get to apply runes from first level. All runes can be applied in one of 2 ways. A rune can be etched on or merely traced. An etched rune is carved, inked, or branded in, though this application does not damage the creature or item. Etching runes requires an artisan's toolkit. Your magic can sustain up to 2 etched runes at a time, and you can etch any number of runes up to this maximum during your daily preparations and when you spend 10 minutes in exploration mode. So you can keep refreshing these runes if you need to throughout the day. It's sort of like precasting spells, but you can only have a certain number of those spells in constant effect equal to the number that you know. As you increase in level, the maximum amount of etched runes you can have at a given time increases, like spells. Your etched runes remain indefinitely until they're expended or removed, or until you etch more runes than your maximum, which causes your oldest rune to fade. A traced rune is drawn lightly in dust, light, or a similar fleeting medium. Or, blood or something, because combat. You can trace runes with the below action. Trace rune, 1 action or 2 actions, has the Concentrate, Magical, Manipulator, and Runesmith traits. Requirements: you have a free hand or are holding an Artisan's Toolkit. That is an important aspect of this class. You virtually always need a free hand. As in, a hand that is not currently holding a weapon or shield. That hand could be holding an Artisan's Toolkit instead of being empty, but it cannot be used in combat. That's why it feels so much like the Thaumaturge, because the handedness is the balance of the class. So you can only use lighter one-handed weapons. Or a shield. Really, you should... Well, not should. You could have a Rondash or Buckler so that it's lashed to your arm and it counts as a free hand still. Cool. Or you can have a really big-ass cool shield that also has shield boss on it or a shield spike, and that's the weapon you use too. Alright, trace rune. Your fingers dance glowing light leaving behind the image of a rune. You apply 1 rune to an adjacent target matching the rune's usage description. The rune remains until the end of your next turn. If you spend 2 actions to trace a rune, you draw the rune in the air and it appears on a target within 30 feet. You can have any number of runes applied in this way. The unlimited number doesn't really mean much if it's just gonna fade at the end of your next turn. So, sure, why not? You could have a maximum of 10 active at one time, and they all end next turn, so... Invoking runes. Magic on your lips. You can pronounce the true name of a rune you have applied, calling it to power using invocation actions. You gain the below invocation action. I love this part because it's so fucking dramatic in the middle of a fight! Invoke rune. 1 action, invocation, magical, runesmith traits. You utter the name of 1 or more of your runes within 30 feet. The rune blazes with power, applying the effect at its invocation entry. The rune then fades away, its task completed. You can invoke any number of runes with a single invoke rune action, but creatures that would be affected by multiple copies of the same specific rune are affected only once, as normal for duplicate effects. But that's neat that you can trigger multiple things at once, and some of the runes are just damage. So, like, you spend 2 actions and then 2 actions putting runes on at a distance, and then later on spend 1 action to, like, blow them the fuck up. If you don't have a copy of the playtest, you can look on your screen for a moment and see the Runesmith runic repertoire. You start with 4 different runes you know, and you can have a maximum of 2 etched at any time. It increases up to 13 that you know, and 6 etched at one time, so it's never, like, an enormous amount. That's a good amount. I mean, that's useful. But you could also increase that later with feats. You get shield block. Cool. A minor thing is Runic Crafter at 2nd level. You get magical crafting feat. And you also automatically gain the formulas for the fundamental armor runes, armor potency and resilient, fundamental shield rune, reinforcing, and fundamental weapon runes, weapon potency and striking, as soon as your level equals each items. Cool. You don't need a formula book. You just know them. That's mostly why you need crafting. In order to understand why the feats matter, you should probably know what the runes are. In here, a couple of times, it seems like they're giving tacit approval to create your own runes. So work with your GM to come up with new stuff. I would actually suggest looking at the Illumians from 3.5 D&D for inspiration, because they do a lot with sigils and words, including combining different runes together, much like they do here with the diacritic. I'm going to start runes now. If you don't want to hear the runes, you want to skip right to the feats, because you already know about the runes, or you just don't care, go to this time. I want to read this little blurb here about runic phrases, because it's all about words, so you must care about words, right? That's why you're watching this. While runes may have different proper names in various cultures or magical schools, the following represent some of their most common forms. Scholars and runesmiths will assemble runes according to a standard grammar, often appending diacritic runes onto their base runes. For instance, the combined form of Ranshu, the rune of thunder, and En, the rune of expansion, might be called En Ranshu. While runes describe fundamental forces of the world, language is ever-changing, and so new runes might be born and old runes fade from memory, as words and concepts are born and fall out of use. Again, they're encouraging you to make new ones. There are a lot of first-level runes. That doesn't mean that they stay first level, because they advance with you like the kineticist impulses. So the first rune we have is Atril, Rune of Fire. So in combat, if you invoke it, you scream Atril. It has the traits Fire, Primal Rune, Runesmith. Usage, drawn on a creature or object. This rune is often placed on a stone in a hearth to ensure a fire does not go out in the night, its power enabling even stone to burn. The bearer's fire resistance, if any, is reduced by 6. Its immunities are unaffected. Invocation. The bearer takes 2d6 fire damage with a basic fortitude save. On a critical failure, they are dazzled for 1 round. Level +2. So at 3rd level, this improves. The reduction in fire resistance increases by 1, and the damage of the invocation increases by 2d6. A few times in here, several actually, they mentioned something in the flavor that is not at all in the mechanics. I suggest just including the flavor in the mechanics, because it's a fun additional effect, and it usually doesn't have any combat impact. It's just cool or useful for exploration mode. So, like, if you want to start a fire at night, instead of gathering firewood, just put this rune on a rock in the middle of the camp, in the campfire area, circle, pit, whatever, and it lights on fire. Next rune, first level, Esvadir, Rune of Whetstones. Magical rune, runesmith traits. Usage, drawn on a piercing or slashing weapon or unarmed strike. This serrated rune, when placed on a blade, ensures it will never go dull. On a successful strike, the weapon deals an additional 2 persistent bleed damage per weapon damage die. Personally, I would give this weapon some sort of resistance versus rust, but that's just me as a GM. Invocation. The essence of sharpness is released outwards from the rune, dealing 2d6 slashing damage to a creature adjacent to the rune bearer with a basic fortitude save. Level +2, the damage of the invocation increases by 2d6. So there are a lot of these that are just, it hurts stuff better. Because this class is a martial, you can prop up your own in-combat abilities or worthiness by using the runes on yourself. You will never be a fighter, because you just don't get those bonuses to hit. You won't be critting as often. And your armor class won't be as good. You're not a fighter. But if you choose to, you could forego the trying to equate another martial and use your runes to make them way better, or as just support for your party. Like, you can play one of these guys that, sure, you fire a bow from distance, but you also, like, bless your allies with protection, defense, healing, whatever. Next rune, Hultrick, Rune of Dwarven Ramparts. It has the traits Dwarf, Magical Rune, Runesmith. Usage, drawn on a shield. The dwarf trait doesn't mean you have to be a dwarf. Similarity in the dwarven words for wall and shield ensure that this angular rune, once used to shore up tunnels, can apply equally well in the heat of battle. A shield bearing this rune increases its circumstance bonus to AC by 1. That's its passive effect. Invocation. You call the shield to its rightful place. You raise the shield bearing the rune as if the rune bearer had used raise a shield, and the shield retains the increased bonus to AC until the beginning of the creature's next turn. So you can raise a shield for somebody else, much like the empowered version of shield for a psychic. Note that it has nothing to do with shoring up a tunnel. But again, just include that, because it gives it more meaning and depth, more multifaceted ability. It makes the words seem more important than just, you make a shield harder. Next rune, Marcel, Rune of Impact. Again, rune 1. Traits, Magical Rune, Runesmith. They're all going to be magical in some way, and rune and runesmith. I'm going to skip all those. Usage. Drawn on a bludgeoning weapon or unarmed strike. This rune magnifies force many times over as it passes through the rune's concentric rings. The weapon deals 1 bludgeoning splash damage per weapon damage die. If the weapon is a melee weapon, the rune bearer is immune to this splash damage. Kind of necessary. Invocation. The weapon vibrates as power concentrates within it. The next successful strike made with the weapon before the end of its wielder's next turn deals an additional die of damage, and the target must succeed at a fortitude save. against your class DC or be pushed 10 feet in a straight line backwards or 20 feet on a critical failure. That's at first fucking level. I'm betting they're going to nerf that, because that's neat. It's really neat. That's far further than I think anything else at that level can do, or even a little higher. Next first level rune, Ulgenext, Rune of Coward's Bane. It's the occult trait, usage drawn on a shield. This rune resembles a broken arrow. While the shield is raised, it also grants the bearer a +1 status bonus to AC against physical ranged attacks. Invocation, the rune creates an illusion in the minds of all creatures adjacent to the rune bearer that lasts for 1 round. The illusion is of a large impassable wall blocking all paths away from the rune bearer. Creatures affected by this invocation can't willingly move further away from the rune bearer for 1 round, or until they disbelieve the illusion, usually by using a seek action against your class DC. So you can make, if you choose to just keep this up every turn, you can spend 3 actions just making one of your friends a better tank. This is how you do support as a runesmith. Next first level rune, Pluna, Rune of Illumination. It has the light trait, usage drawn on a creature or armor. While many runes are enchanted to glow, light is the focus of this simple rune. The rune sheds bright light in a 20-foot emanation and dim light to 40 feet. Creatures in the emanation take a -1 item penalty to stealth checks. Invocation, each creature in the light must succeed at a fortitude save against your class DC or be dazzled for 1 round. The light fades, but the target still sheds dim light in a 20-foot emanation for 1 round. See, these things don't say they have to be used on an ally either, drawn on a creature or armor. So you could just use these on your enemies. And remember that these can be used up to 30 feet away. Next rune, first level, Ranshu, Rune of Thunder. It has the electricity trait and primal. Usage drawn on a creature or object. This vertical rune is often carved on tall towers to draw lightning and shield the buildings below it. If the bearer does not take a move action at least once on its turn, lightning finds it at the end of its turn, dealing 1d4 electricity damage. Invocation. The preliminary streaks of lightning braid together into a powerful bolt. The rune bearer takes 2d6 electricity damage with a basic fortitude save. Again, using this to draw lightning to protect tall towers is not mechanically what it does. But so what? Have it do that. Oh, for every 2 levels you get beyond 1 for Ranshu, the damage increases by 1, and the damage of the invocation increases by 2d6. There's a lot that are just damage. Next, first level rune, Sun, Diacritic Rune of Preservation. It has the trait Diacritic in addition to Magical Rune and Runesmith. Usage drawn on a rune. The spiraling Diacritic channels the magic of a rune outwards, then back to the same location, allowing a rune to reconstitute itself. After the base rune is invoked, the rune automatically traces itself back upon the same target. Fuck yeah! Special. You can have only 1 copy of Sun Diacritic Rune of Preservation applied at a given time, and once you invoke it, you cannot etch or trace it again for 10 minutes. So it just gives you an extra use of something that you're invoking. But it also saves you actions in combat, especially at range. Next first level rune is also Diacritic. It's Diacritic Rune of Intensity. Usage, drawn on a rune that deals damage. This Diacritic accentuates the base rune with bolder lines to give greater weight to its effects. When the base rune is invoked, its invocation gains a status bonus to damage equal to your intelligence modifier. Yeah, okay. It's not huge. It's not that impressive, but it is extremely useful. It is only the invocation, that's why it's not that amazing. But it's still bonus damage. Bonus damage is always useful. Next first level rune, Zok, Rune of Homecoming. Has the arcane trait, usage drawn on a creature. This circular mark is meant to allow travelers to always find their way home. The target gains a plus 15-foot status bonus to their speeds, but only when their movement would end closer to you than they started their turn. I think that means then when they started their turn. Invocation is you call the rune bearer to your side. You teleport the target to any unoccupied square adjacent to you. If the bearer is unwilling, they can attempt a will save to negate the effect. Totally fucking useful, whether you're trying to tank or just protect your allies. It's really good. Next, we're beginning the level 9 runes. N, Diacritic Rune of Expansion. This is diacritic. This has the diacritic trait as well. Usage, drawn on a rune that deals damage. This diacritic surrounds a rune with outward-facing arrows to magnify and direct power outward. When the base rune is invoked, its damage applies in a 15-foot burst, centered on the rune bearer. If any creatures are also within the area, they are subject to the base rune's effects, including any saving throw. It's make everything a fireball rune. Next, level 9 rune, Fakris, Rune of Gravity. It has the arcane trait. It doesn't need the magical trait too, that's a mistake. Usage, drawn on a creature or armor. The lines of this rune overlap strangely, making it seem larger than it really is. The rune bearer gains a +2 item bonus to athletics checks and gains the benefits of the Titan Wrestler feat. Invocation, all creatures in a 15-foot emanation around the rune bearer must succeed at a fortitude save or be pulled 5 feet towards the rune bearer or 10 feet on a critical failure. Neat. Wow. Its upgrade is at level 17. The item bonus increases to +3. You know the builds this is useful for. It's nice if you don't already have the Titan Wrestler feat. I would say you can gain another athletics-based feat if you already have it, because then it's always going to be useful if you're looking for an athletics build. I like Zoke, Rune of Homecoming, better than Fakris, the Rune of Gravity, because it only affects one target, but it brings them right next to you. This affects everybody in a small area and brings them a little bit closer to you. It could be totally useful for tactics in combat, but I like knowing that they're going to land right next to me. Next level 9 rune, Ikelsu, Rune of Observation. As the occult trait, usage drawn on a creature, a ring of dotted circles. This rune allows a creature marked within it to see all. The target is affected by See the Unseen and gains all-around vision, which prevents it from being flanked. Prevents. That's a really powerful rune. The invocation. The eyes of the rune fly outwards, attaching to all creatures in a 20-foot emanation. Each of these creatures that was invisible becomes concealed instead, and each one that was concealed for any other reason is no longer concealed. This effect lasts for 2 rounds. So, See the Unseen allows you to see things better, and then once you see that there are invisible things around you, you can share that with your friends, basically. Fuck yes. This is totally useful for combat. Or trying to avoid being snuck up on and ambushed. Next 9th level rune, Inth, Diacritic Rune of Corruption. It has the traits Diacritic, Divine, Fiend, Fire, and Unholy. Usage drawn on a rune. This set of angular accents around the base rune channels the essence of fiendish corruption. The base rune gains the Unholy trait, as does any damage it deals. If applied to a holy creature, that creature is enfeebled 1 for as long as the rune is applied to it. That's not going to come up. Invocation, Unholy. When the base rune is invoked, it burns away an unholy black fire that lingers on its target. In addition to the base rune's normal effect, the target takes 1d4 persistent fire damage. For every 2 levels it increases, the damage increases by 1d4. I really wish that did more. It's not amazing at all. Ooh. The damage or the basic passive benefit that meh. For level 9, nah. Next level 9 rune, Juro's Rune of Dragon Fury. It has the trait Dragon, in addition to the others. Usage, etched on a creature or armor. This angular rune channels the fury of dragon kind. Whenever a creature strikes the rune bearer or steals from them, Draconic Sanction fully focuses on them, causing them to become off guard for 1 round. That makes no fucking sense. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. Except that dragons say, no, so you're off guard. Invocation. As a free action, the rune bearer can fly up to 60 feet toward a creature that has damaged them in the last minute. If they end this movement adjacent to the creature becomes off guard until the end of the rune bearer's next turn. If the rune bearer doesn't have a fly speed and ends its movement in the air, they safely float back to the ground at the end of their next turn. So that's an invocation that's awesome. With a passive ability that's also awesome. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I want the flavor to be changed. Next level 9 rune, Kojastri, Rune of Insulation. As the arcane trait, usage drawn on armor. This rune insulates from harmful energy of all kinds. The creature wearing the armor gains resistance 5 to your choice of cold, electricity, or fire, and any creature that touches them or damages them with an unarmed attack or non-reach melee weapon takes 2d6 damage. The rune has the trait of the energy type chosen and deals damage of that type. Invocation. Any creature that has the armor's wearer engulfed, grabbed, restrained, or swallowed whole takes 4d6 damage with a basic reflex save against your class DC. On a failure, it also releases the armor's wearer. It can be in the stomach of a dragon, and this person gets vomited up. Awesome! I mean, that's not always going to come up, but when it does, you don't want to have to say goodbye to your friend. Level +4, or yourself. Level +4, so every 4 levels above this, the resistance increases by 5, and the damage increases by 1d6 or 2d6 for the invocation. That's all balanced. It makes sense. It's a very all-around useful rune. Rune 9, next 9th level rune, Trollistry, rune of forlorn sorrow. It has the arcane trait as well as elf, emotion, and mental usage etched onto armor or a creature. This rune calls to mind the forlorn nature of elves. Oh yes, everything is so dramatic and sad. And the beauty within it. While this rune is beautiful, sorrow is best admired from a distance, discouraging approach. Enemies within 20 feet of the rune bearer treat all squares between them and the rune bearer as difficult terrain. Obviously not useful for a tank, but useful for putting on yourself if you're a ranged marshal, or putting on any of your fucking casters. Invocation. Sorrow blots out the capacity for any other action. Each enemy within 20 feet becomes very melodramatic and emo. Each enemy within 20 feet of the rune bearer must succeed at a will saving throw or be slowed 1 as it spends the first action of its next turn sobbing, or slowed 2 on a critical failure. Regardless of the outcome, the creature is then temporarily immune to this invocation for 1 hour. I want more things that make enemies have emotional outbursts. Seriously, it's funny. 17th level runes. We just skipped right over 13. I don't know why. Ion, the Elf Gate Key. Traits arcane elf teleportation, usage drawn on a creature. This masterful circular rune is key to the Ayudara network of elf gates that stretch across the stars. Once per turn, when the rune bearer takes a stride action, they can instead teleport a distance equal to their speed. Invocation. You teleport the rune bearer to a location adjacent to any of your other runes, as long as it is on the same plane. Anywhere. An unwilling target can attempt a will save to resist this teleportation. Special. If you have the ability to cast the Sigil cantrip, then you can use Ion's invocation to teleport the rune bearer to a location adjacent to any of your sigils on the same plane, in addition to any of your runes. This doesn't say that they can't be teleported into harm. And you should absolutely use it that way because it's funny. But, you have to have some way of giving your allies, I guess you have to do scrying too, so you can see them actually die from you doing this. Next rune, Rovan, Seal of the Dead Vault. It has the Divine and Earth traits, usage drawn on a creature. This mighty jagged rune is just one of several that keeps the Destroyer sealed in his prison deep in Golarian's core. The rune bearer takes a 20-foot penalty to its land speed and a 40-foot penalty to all other speeds as the rune attempts to bind the creature. If a creature's fly speed is reduced to 0 this way, it can't take the fly or arrest a fall action. Oh. Well, you can just make it fall to the ground and hurt itself. That's neat. Invocation. Earth and Incapacitation. The ground in a 10-foot emanation around the rune bearer becomes difficult terrain permanently, and the rune bearer must attempt a fortitude saving throw as the earth around it attempts to surround and imprison it. The rune bearer is then immune to your Rovan Seal of the Dead Vault runes for 24 hours. Critical success, the bearer is unaffected. Success, the bearer becomes slowed 1 for 1 round. Failure, the bearer becomes slowed 2 for 1 round. Critical failure, the bearer becomes slowed 2, restrained, and blinded as it becomes trapped in a massive compressed sphere of earth. If the bearer is unable to escape the sphere within 3 rounds, it becomes petrified. Over the course of a year, the sphere forms a small hill around it, hiding its buried prisoner. At the top of the hill, a stone with the image of this rune remains. Counteracting the stone frees the prisoner. That is totally the opening for an adventure. You find a rune on a hill. All right, well, I scratch it out. Okay, there's a rumbling from under you and a dragon's released. Runesmith Feats. First level, Backup Runic Enhancement. While you are not a spellcaster, you have a working knowledge of the most fundamental of runic magic. You can cast the Sigil cantrip as an innate spell at will. Once per day, you can cast your choice of either runic body or runic weapon as an innate spell. The rank of these spells is equal to half your level rounded up, and the tradition can be any tradition for which you are at least trained in the related skill. That's really cool. I personally use automatic runic progression, so that will never really do a lot. But for everyone else, that's incredibly useful and probably necessary. Next feat, Engraving Strike. 1 action, frequency once per round. Requirements: you are wielding a melee weapon. You draw a rune onto the surface of your weapon in reverse. The mark branding or bruising itself into your target in the moment of impact. Make a melee strike with a weapon. On a success, you trace a rune onto the target of the strike. Yeah. That's useful, because it traces and hits somebody. And that's going to be taken by almost everybody. Next level 1 feat, Remote Detonation. Every class should have remote detonation. I don't care what it's for. They need to be able to blow something up. See, this is why I don't play marshals. I like blowing shit up. Which is why I'm a GM. It's a free action. It has the invocation trait. Frequency once per round. You whisper an invocation over an arrow or sling bullet as you fire it. And the hissing of the missile through the air sounds just like your murmured voice. For both of the Impossible Playtest classes, they hit the flavor on the head. If your next action is a successful ranged strike using physical ammunition against a target within the first range increment of your weapon, you also invoke all the runes on the target as the missile's whispering sets off the runes. If the strike was a critical success, the target takes a -1 circumstance penalty on any saving throws against the runes invoked by your remote detonation. That's just fun. Next level 1 feat, Rune Singer. You practice the lost art of using music to guide the act of carving your runes, singing them into existence as much as crafting them. You can use performance instead of crafting when attempting crafting checks related to runes. Once per minute, you can trace a rune with song alone, removing the need to have a free hand, removing the manipulate trait from trace rune, and allowing you to use the 2-action version of trace rune as a single action. You don't need to be able to move your hands when tracing a rune using song, but you do need to be able to sing in a clear voice. I think this needs work. I think that because it's only once per minute, it does not allow you to overall change your character build. I think that it should allow you to use performance instead of crafting so you can have a shield and sword and sing these things into creation. I don't think that it should allow you to use the 2-action version of Trace Rune as a single action, just because that would be more powerful than it currently is as level 1 feat. I mean, that would be a little unbalanced to both reduce the amount of time that it takes and give you your hand back that the class took away. Because once per minute makes this not that useful. Yes, okay, it could be used for certain builds. Like you are just going to be using the etched runes and not invoke them, which makes you really boring and not all that support based. So yes, you could do that. But I think it needs some help. It needs change. Second level feats. Fortifying Knock. 1 action. Frequency once per round. Requirements: you are wielding a shield. Your shield is a natural canvas of for your art. In 1 motion, you raise a shield and trace a rune on your shield. Amazingly useful. I wish it could be on your shield or on your opponent or an ally standing adjacent to you. But it is still useful to protect yourself. And to protect yourself better than you were before. Because you're tracing something on your shield to help you. Anything that reduces the amount of actions things take is better than not taking it. So this is a really good feat for this class. It's so interesting that, like, because you get shield block and different abilities for shields, it seems like people should use a shield. So you're probably going to use a buckler or a rondash. in order to use a weapon still, or just use a shield that has the shield boss and spike. I don't expect anybody will be using just a one-handed weapon and actually nothing in their other hand. Next feat, level 2, Invisible Ink, 1 action. After your rune is drawn, it flares once and then fades, leaving only the barest mark. You can use the Conceal an Object action with any of your applied runes to hide the rune on the object or creature to whom you have applied it. The GM rolls a crafting check instead of stealth. I have no idea why that would matter. I guess in social situations that you don't want to give it away. Okay, fine. I could see that. Like, you're speaking with the Countessa, and you don't want her to know that you just put an exploding rune on her dining room table. That makes sense to me. I think that should also count for the sigil spell. Because it's the same thing. It's drawing a glyph on something. Next feat, level 2, Runic Tattoo. Drawing your favorite rune in your flesh, you know you'll never be without it. Choose one rune you know, which you apply as a tattoo to your body. The rune is always etched on your body and doesn't count toward your maximum limit of etched runes. Yes! You can invoke this rune like any of your other runes, but once invoked, the rune fades significantly and is drained of power until your next daily preparations. This is great. You can magically alter your Runic Tattoo to change it to another rune you know, or remove it altogether with a week of downtime. I think you should just take overnight. That should be fine. Why do you need a week of downtime? Next feat, level 2, Smithing Weapons Familiarity. Though you are an artisan, you are well versed in using the tools of your trade to fend off enemies. You have familiarity with weapons in the hammer, pick, and knife weapon groups. For the purposes of proficiency, you treat any of these that are martial weapons as simple weapons and any that are advanced weapons as martial weapons. Who cares? Really, who cares? I mean, it doesn't count. I've seen this question on Reddit. It doesn't count as having artisan tools. It's a weapon that's a hammer, a weapon that's a pick, or a knife. Next feat, level 4. Artist Attendance. 2 actions, frequency once per round. Your runes call you to better attend to your art. Stride twice. If you end your movement within reach of a creature that is bearing one of your runes, you can trace a rune upon any creature adjacent to you, even a different creature. You can use Artist's Attendance while burrowing, climbing, flying, or swimming instead of striding if you have the corresponding movement type. It's action compression. It's doing 3 things for 2 actions. It's great. Take it. Next feat, level 4, Ghostly Renaissance. Ghostly Resonance. Level 4 feat. Your runes can not only draw power from the world of the spirits, but they can let even the most mundane objects harm spiritual beings as well. You can choose to grant any creature or item bearing one of your divine or occult runes the benefits of a ghost touch rune for as long as they are bearing your rune. For some people, this will be essential. I'm glad it exists. That's all I have to say about it, because otherwise it's useless. Next feat, level 4, Terrifying Invocation, 1 action. Why does it have the... Oh, these are feats, that's why. Next feat, Terrifying Invocation, 1 action, has the invocation trait. You spit and roar as you pronounce your rune's terrible name. You attempt to demoralize a single target within range, and then invoke 1 rune upon the target. You can demoralize the target as long as they are within range of your invocation, and you don't take a penalty if the creature doesn't understand your language. Great. It's awesome for demoralizing builds, which is a very powerful in-combat action to take. Next feat, level 4, Transpose Etching, has the Manipulate trait. With a pinching gesture, you pick up a word and move it elsewhere. You move any one of your runes within 30 feet to a different target within 30 feet. I'm picturing this as like, you know, they're far away and you're like, I pinch your head and I put it over there. Because I'm immature. 6th level feats, Runic Reprisal. Invocation trait, prerequisites, Fortifying Knock. When you raise your shield, you bury a runic trap into it to be set off by the clash of an enemy weapon. When you use Fortifying Knock, you can trace a damaging rune on your shield, even if it could not normally be applied to a shield. The traced rune doesn't have its normal effect, instead fading into your shield. If you shield block with the shield against an adjacent target, you can invoke the rune as part of the reaction, causing the rune to detonate outwards and apply its invocation effect to the attacking creature. Fuck yes! It saves you actions. It saves you actions twice. It's great. It's good. Because you don't have to trace the rune on anybody and take that action, and you don't have to use the invocation effect and take that action. It's just, it invokes from your shield onto your enemy. That's a really great feat. Next feat, Tracing Trance. Free action, trigger, your turn begins. Your hands flow unbidden, tracing runes as if by purest instinct. You become quickened until the end of your turn and can use the extra action only to trace runes, including to supply one action if using the 2-action version of Trace Rune. Absorbed in the act of creation, you can't use any invocation actions this turn. I would say that's useful, because this class, like the Necromancer, it was created with the concept of set up, then act. Both can do support that way, for that reason. And so, spending a whole round, and you can use this on multiple rounds in a combat. You can use this as many times per day as you want. So you can spend 2 rounds just setting up a bunch of runes. Next feat, level 6, Vital Composite Invocation. 2 actions. That's a mouthful. It has the traits Healing, Invocation, and Vitality. As you invoke runes from traditions that manipulate vital energy, you can release that energy to restore flesh. You invoke 2 runes of your choice on a single creature. One must be a divine rune, and one must be a primal rune. In addition to the rune's normal effects, the creature also regains hit points equal to your intelligence modifier plus double your level. That's not a lot of healing. And you can only use it once per 10 minutes. But it is healing. And you can use this for out-of-combat healing if you want to, which is nice because you don't have to invest in medicine. Next feat, Words Fly Free. 1 action, manipulate trait prerequisites, Runic Tattoo. Requirements, your Runic Tattoo is not faded, so you couldn't have invoked it yet. Just because your runes are tattooed on your body doesn't mean they need to remain there. You fling your hand out, the rune from your runic tattoo flowing down it and flying through the air in a crescent. I love this. You trace the rune onto all creatures or objects within a 15-foot cone that match the rune's usage requirement. The rune then returns to you, faded. It's an option for a usage of your tattoo. It allows you to buff your entire party. It can be, or, you could just have that runic tattoo be something offensive and put it on a bunch of enemies. But I think its best use is support in combat. It saves actions again. 8th level feats. Drawn in Red. Free action. Requirements. Your last action was a successful melee strike that dealt physical damage. After striking the target, you run a brush or finger along your weapon to collect a bit of its blood. For the next minute, when you trace a rune and the target is that creature, you can do so at a range of 60 feet as a single action. Using Drawn in Red against a different creature requires you to wipe off or otherwise discard the blood used for the previous creature, which you can do as a free action. There's no time limit on this. It's amazing. Take this. It makes things take less actions and be at a better range. So it will be good if you are in melee or at range. Depending on what your role is in the party, it's always going to be useful. Hi. How did you take up residence there? The cats don't like me using my mouse pad. Fine. Next feat, Elemental Revision. 1 action. You can scratch out and rewrite part of an elemental rune to temporarily change the type of power it channels. You touch an adjacent corrosive flaming frost shock or thundering rune on an unattended item or one held by a willing creature, and you change it to any other rune from that list. The revision lasts for 1 minute before the rune's original magic reasserts itself. A rune can be revised in this way only once per day. This feat is impressively useful in combat. I mean, of course, most of this is combat. It ensures that your party doesn't have to spend money on every kind of elemental damage rune for their weapons, because you can just change it to whatever the fuck is appropriate. I mean, this would really be most beneficial if you had somebody in the party who has amazingly recall knowledge abilities for a variety of things like a thaumaturge. So this is the thaumaturge class that needs a thaumaturge in the party. At 15th level, you can revise the greater version of any of the above runes into the greater version of any other rune on the list. For instance, greater corrosive into greater frost. And you can revise a rune once per hour instead of once per day. Next feat, Read the Bones. It has the exploration and prediction traits, which is their new way of saying divination. Using ancient scripts, you carve a question into bone before casting it into fire where it cracks. This minor ritual takes 10 minutes. By interpreting the cracks, you can gain the benefits of augury related to the question carved on the bone. I love this. I'm glad it exists. It is very occultic. I have wanted some class or archetype to be a rune caster, somebody who throws the runes and reads them to predict the future. That's this. Next feat, level 10, Chain of Words. We're in 10th level feats now. Chain of Words, 2 actions, invocation trait, frequency once per 10 minutes. You see the thin lines of magic between your creations. You can exploit that connection with a small shift of power traveling from one rune to another. Invoke runes on 2 different rune bearers within 60 feet. In addition to the rune's normal effects, a chain of glowing script flows between them, dealing 5d6 force damage to all creatures in the line, but not the rune bearers. Creatures can attempt a basic reflex saving throw. On a critical failure, they are restrained as the runes seal their movements until the end of your next turn or until they escape. The DC to escape is your class DC. At 12th level and every 2 levels thereafter, the damage increases by 1d6. So this is something that you'd probably be putting on allies that you definitely need to think strategically with this class. This class is not for people who just want to smack things or throw big spells. You have to think about and prepare for your encounters. And during the encounters. Next feat, Clashing Composite Invocation. 2 actions, invocation trait, frequency once per 10 minutes. As you invoke runes from disparate traditions of magic, their diametrically opposed effects repel each other in a destructive backlash. You invoke 2 runes of your choice on a single creature, which must be from opposed traditions of magic, either 1 arcane and 1 divine rune, or 1 occult and 1 primal rune. In addition to the rune's normal effects, the target must also attempt a fortitude saving throw as destructive magical harmonics clash in their body. Success, the target is sickened 1, but if they take an action to steady themselves, the sickened condition ends immediately. Failure, the target is sickened 1. Critical failure, the target is sickened 2. I like it. It feels right. It feels like having conflicting traditions of magic going on in your body would make you nauseated. Sure. And sickened is powerful. Next feat, Overloaded Ammunition. You can bind power into arrows or sling stones to transform them into explosive missiles. During your daily preparations, you can lay power-containing inscriptions upon 2 pieces of ammunition to transform them into explosive ammunition. GM Core 255. The DC of the explosive ammunition is equal to your class DC. The bindings on the power are unstable, and the ammunition burns itself to ash by your next daily preparations if not used, and so the ammunition has no value if sold. At 14th level, you create greater explosive ammunition instead. Cool. It's good. It's useful. Obviously, not everybody is going to do it because not everybody is going to be using ranged attacks or things that have ammunition. 12th level feats. Astral Composite Invocation. 2 actions. It has the invocation and mental traits. Frequency once per 10 minutes. Invoking runes from 2 schools of magic that both manipulate the intangible realm of thought results in waves of mental interference that stagger your foes. You invoke 2 runes of your choice on a single creature. 1 must be an arcane rune and 1 must be an occult rune. In addition to the rune's normal effects, the creature also must attempt a will saving throw. Success, the target is stupefied 1 until the start of your next turn. Failure, the target is stupefied 2 for a minute. Critical failure, the target is stupefied 3 for a minute. It's great. It's odd that it's a different level than the Clashing Composite Invocation because they're the same theme. I think that seems like a mistake. Is stupefied inherently more powerful than sickened? I don't think so. I guess if it's against the caster, it's infinitely more useful. Next feat, Distant Invocation. Your connection to your runes stretches over even greater distances. You add 30 feet to the range of any of your invocation abilities, typically increasing the range from 30 to 60 feet. This was essential, and they're boring. But you might have to take it. Next feat, Expanded Glossary. You have memorized more runes than many in your craft. Add 2 runes to your runic repertoire. I love it. I love anything that gives you more options. Next feat, we're now in 14th level feats. Dance of Bloody Ink. 3 actions. As you lash out, your weapon is your brush. Wounds forming words of power in your target's flesh. This sounds fun. You invoke a rune on a melee weapon you are wielding and strike with the weapon. It's only melee. Well, that makes sense, I guess. On a hit, you can step and strike again with the same weapon. If the second strike hits, you trace a rune onto the target of the strike. Both attacks count toward your multiple attack penalty, but you do not increase your penalty until you have made all your attacks. Cool. It's just action compression. It's a little boring, but it's also extremely useful. Like pants. Wearing pants. It's extremely useful. Kind of boring. Define the canvas. 2 actions, frequency once per 10 minutes. You produce 4 rune-inscribed stones which whirl in the air once before darting away to the perimeter of a 20-foot burst centered on your square. While you are within the canvas, you can trace a rune directly into the ground, which causes the rune to expand across the entire space, tracing it onto however many creatures on the canvas you choose. The canvas lasts for 1 minute. That's incredible. Level 14 feet, it's appropriately placed. It's going to be something that people choose all the time. Next feat, Henge Gate. 2 actions, frequency once per 10 minutes. This one's kind of complicated. You hold a rune in your heart and strike the earth, causing 2 standing stones to rise nearby, your chosen rune carved upon their surfaces and blazing in the air above them. This is not a subtle spell. Or ability, feat. The stones each appear in an unoccupied 5-foot space within 30 feet of you and within 15 feet of each other. When you raise the Henge Gate, choose 1 rune that can be drawn on a creature to carve into the stones. If you or an ally makes a successful ranged strike using physical ammunition, and that attack passes through the Henge Gate, the ammunition gains that rune in flight and automatically traces it on the target. The Henge Gate lasts for 1 minute. Amazingly useful if you can stay put. If your enemies retreat, it's probably useless. Because then you'd have to move where it is, and you can't do that in combat. You can't recreate it in combat. So this is really only going to be useful if you have a group that almost all of them have a reliable physical ammunition ranged attack. But in a group of archers, it can be really powerful. 16th level feats. By your name. 1 action, frequency once per hour. Requirements, you must know the target's name. Hi. In a moment of inspiration, you understand the target perfectly, allowing you to craft a rune that draws effects to the target by their very name. Attempt a crafting check against a standard DC of the target creature's level. Regardless of the outcome, you cannot attempt to use by your name against the target creature for 24 hours. This is long. I want to say for a moment that when it mentions true name, that's different from knowing the target's name. If the target gives you some bullshit name, that's fine. You can still use this ability on them, and it could help you with other true name abilities you might use on them, or your party might use on them. Critical success. You understand the target's true name, which you add temporarily to your runic repertoire as a special diacritic rune. This diacritic rune magnifies the effects of the base rune when targeting the creature whose true name the rune represents. When invoked, the target takes a -2 circumstance penalty on their saving throw against the effects of the base rune. Additionally, if the base rune deals damage, it gains a status bonus to its damage equal to half your level. That's a lot. The inspiration used to understand this diacritic rune fades quickly, and you forget how to use the diacritic rune after 1 minute. Success. As critical success, but a -1 penalty, and the rune doesn't magnify damage. This tells you a creature's true name. That's what the words mean. They might not have meant that, but for the next minute, you know their true name. So you can share that with the casters in your party that can use true name magic to do extra damage to the person or to force them to do things. There are spells that do that if you know the true name. Next feat, Return unto Runes reaction. Trigger, you are targeted by a ranged spell attack. Requirements, you have a hand free or are holding an artisan's toolkit. You attempt to deconstruct an incoming spell into its individual magical components, storing them temporarily as a rune. You gain a +4 circumstance bonus to AC against the triggering attack. If the attack misses, the spell is returned to its original form sealed in a rune, which floats around your free hand or around your artisan's tools. Until the end of your next turn, you can trace this rune onto a creature as normal. When the rune is invoked, it has the effects of the spell you deconstructed as if the original caster had cast it on the target. The rune affects only the creature it was applied to, even if the original spell could usually affect a greater number of targets. So, like, if you have the right feats, you can cancel a spell that was targeting you, load it into your bow, fire it, and apply it to them. That's cool. 18th level, Annihilating Composite Invocation. It has the invocation trait, frequency once per hour. Each tradition of magic holds sway over 2 of the 4 essences that make up all of creation, and so by invoking runes from each tradition at once, you can pull from the 4 corners of magic to unravel anything. You invoke 4 runes of your choice on a single creature, which must be from each tradition of magic. In addition to the rune's normal effects, the target must also succeed at a basic fortitude saving throw or take 10d4 force damage as destructive magical harmonics clash in their body. If reduced to 0 hit points by this damage or by the damage of any of the runes invoked, the creature's body is torn apart into glowing script that describes the creature to the smallest detail, leaving no remains but leaving their gear unharmed as the letters fade. That's just awesome. Oh, you're drooly. That is an awesome, impressive feat. Next feat, Living Lexicon. Your knowledge of runes knows no bounds. You gain an additional rune in your runic repertoire. Okay, cool. Level 18. Meh. That should be like level 8. 20th level, Forge New Word. At the pinnacle of your art, you have forged a new great rune of power, a new ideal expression of utterance to be added to the craft. You create a rune and add it to your runic repertoire. Name the rune. This rune has the effects of any one spell that is common, or to which you otherwise have access, of 4th rank or lower, and that costs no more than 2 actions to cast. This rune has the unique trait and a magical trait of your choosing, and its usage matches the target of the base spell. For instance, a spell that would target a creature can be drawn on a creature. Neat! I don't like that you have to wait till 20th level, but I love that they have something that imitates a spell. Next feat, Shades of Meaning. Prerequisites, you know 1 or more diacritic runes. It's getting harder to read the screen, guys. As the gap between your intention and your words becomes almost nothing, you find that you don't need to consciously draw the diacritic marks that would embellish or modify your runes. As you draw a rune, it continues to grow outwards like a living thing, applying the exact accent or stress mark you intended for it to have. Whether you etch or trace a rune, you can choose to also apply 1 diacritic rune you know to it as part of the same action. That makes sense as a 20th level ability, because it just compresses your actions a lot and applies modifiers to something that you're currently doing. I mean, I guess I could see it as lower, but 20th is fine. It makes sense. And that is all of the feats and all of the runes for the Runesmith. I don't think I will make a Runesmith build, because I don't care about martials. However, I could see myself... Stop, don't do that. I can see myself using it for an archetype, like I mentioned. And once the class comes out, I'm certainly going to do a reprise of this video. So, what I like most about the Runesmith is the theme. It is fucking awesome for a nerdy bookworm like me, and like most of you. You're going to hit people with your knowledge in a much more visceral way than a wizard. I can see this being good friends with wizards and whatnot. Anyway, so that's it. Thank you for being here. As I said previously, if you want to have me... Hi. if you want to have me make a video about how to do the review for the playtest and how to submit useful information, let me know. I'll make that video. If you are a patron, thank you for being here every day and caring for the channel and the kitties. The kitties say hi and love you. And if you are not a patron and would like a chance to win this thing, it is well, we give away something every month. But the end of this month, we're going to be doing a drawing for this D20 jar. It's so freaking pretty, though. Yeah, I know. I love this thing. It's a fun place to put things, like candies or chocolate-covered coffee beans. You know what I'm talking about. Espresso and dark chocolate. Crunchy, crunchy. Anyway, we have a link in the description for Patreon if you want to go there and pledge $5 or more per month. Then you can be in the drawing for winning this thing. And if you are interested in the highest tier of patronage, then I would make something for you every month, and you would get random dice sent to you. Because we make those here. My girlfriend makes them, Storm. And the kitties get to stay the hell out of the printers. Because they don't do that very well. Yeah. If you're interested in seeing... cat hair. If you're interested in seeing more Immortal stuff here, if you're interested in seeing the live stream game doing Stolen Fate right here, such a fun adventure. See you there. Okay, thanks, bye. Don't lick this. Did you already lick this? I'll clean it.